to record the action, transmit the bill to the House. Senate Bill 1231.
SB 1231, an act amending Title 12, Chapter 7, Article 2, Arizona Revised Statutes by adding sections 12827, 12828, 12829, and 12830, amending section 13603, Arizona Revised Statutes, amending Title 13, Chapter 38, Arizona Revised Statutes by adding Article 35, amending sections 31402, 31403, and 411750, Arizona Revised Statutes relating to legal border crossings.
You've heard the third reading of Senate Bill 1231. Those in favor of the measure vote aye. Those opposed vote no. This is now open. The Senate will now proceed to vote. This is an emergency measure and require 2/3 vote for its passage with the emergency. Senator Bravo.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Temp. I rise to explain my vote.
Please.
14 years ago, my brother and I visited the Sandra Day O'Connor U.S. Courthouse to listen to Judge Susan Bolton. I actually arrived very early in the morning. I ended up sitting right next to Governor Brewer in the very first row. We would listen to then Attorney General Eric Holder deliver oral arguments to Judge Susan Bolton, who would go on to strip away provisions of a different bill that passed out of this chamber. Many of us remember Senate Bill 1070. Our state went on to pay over $1.4 million in litigation only for unconstitutional provisions to be removed. Our reputation as a state was damaged, and during a time when we are facing a budget deficit, it is irresponsible to repeat the same mistakes of the past that would only invite more costly lawsuits. And for that reason, I vote no.
Senator Bravo votes no. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. I rise to explain my vote.
Please.
Senate Bill 1231 is playing on the fear that there's an invasion at our southern border, when in reality there is a humanitarian crisis. Criminalizing a humanitarian crisis is not only immoral, it is unchristian and un-American. We know that the majority of the individuals entering our state from other countries are immigrants in search for a better life. And isn't that why everyone in this room and in our state, except for indigenous people, came here to this country and this state from wherever their ancestry might lie? I would agree that there is a federal immigration policy that needs fixing, that needs to be worked on. But this kind of law is also unconstitutional. And it will play on people, especially in my district and in District 21 and in District 20, all in the south, having a border with Mexico. on people, on racial profiling on people that look like me. Because this is a bill that is being, that is here before us, that is really, was fashioned from 1070. That bill in 2010 was unconstitutional and has been litigated out of the courts because it was unconstitutional. The same is going to happen with Senate Bill 1231. It is unconstitutional. It will harm and bring discomfort and really damage the community that I represent in District 20. And instead of working together and working, really stressing to our congressional delegation to really work on an immigration fix, that's what needs to happen. Instead of criminalizing, again, people that look like me. And we're citizens. We are indigenous people. We have 2 reservations that have people on both sides of the border. The Honoatam Nation and Pasquayaki tribe have people on both sides of the border, and are the second and the third largest tribes in Arizona. These people will be unfairly racially profiled by police, law enforcement in southern Arizona, simply because of how we look and the color of our skin. We ought to be doing better. Our people deserve better. And I vote a resounding no.
Senator Gonzalez votes no. Senator Alston. Senator Alston.
Mr. President Pro Tem, I would like to explain my vote.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. Criminalizing a humanitarian crisis is wrong. And I agree with Senator Gonzalez that it is immoral, it is unchristian, and it is un-American. Senate Bill 1231 would interfere with an individual's legal ability to seek asylum by authorizing Arizona's judges who are not trained in immigration law and have no proper authority to enforce it, to order a person's deportation without due process and before they have had an opportunity to seek humanitarian protection. It's time for our legislature to work together to find humane solutions to our immigration issues. Solutions that create a fair system that allows everyone to seek the American dream. Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem.
Senator Alston votes no. Senator Kern.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. I rise to explain my vote.
Please.
First, I want to thank the sponsor, Senator Shamp, for bringing this to the floor. Second, I just want to kind of say that I get really, really, really tired of every time we try to do what the government's responsibility to do is to protect its citizens, that it's called racist, unchristian, and so on and so forth. the racist card is null and void when it comes to protecting our citizens of all colors and all nationalities. It is the government's responsibility to protect its citizens. The issue at our southern border is the number one issue on the voters' minds in this 2024 election year. And we have got to do everything we can as a state to seal our border. Under the Biden administration, we have had over 7.2 million illegal aliens crossing our border. If we all remember, October 7th, just a few months ago, what happened in Israel. These people crossing our southern border come from 165 different nations. Different nations. And if you think that everyone is coming to get a better life or for humanitarian reasons, that is an absolute lie. Because 165 different nations, many coming from nations that we deem terrorist nations in our country. October 7th, let me refresh your memory. Babies in Israel being burned in ovens, burned alive, tied together in front of their parents and being burned. Pregnant women, bellies being sliced open and their babies being dismembered in front of their dying mother. Rapes, murders, so on and so forth. Those same people, they are in our country. We have 7.2 million illegal aliens have crossed the border since the Biden administration took office. We do not know most of them. Very few of them have been vetted. And it's time to do what we need to do to protect our country, shut our border. The only president that I know that had a handle on this border was President Donald Trump. And I'm hoping he gets reelected so we can shut this border down and stop this influx of illegal aliens. And with that, I vote aye.
Senator Kern votes aye. Senator Rogers,
Mr. President Pro Tem, I rise to explain my vote.
please.
Thank you to the senator from District 29. I want to quote what the side opposite has just said a moment ago, that this will bring harm and discomfort to people of color. This will save people of color. This will save women and children and little boys and little girls who are being trafficked across our border. Modern day slavery. And if the oath of office that I took to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I took that as a lifetime oath, but the federal government is not holding up its responsibility. And so it comes to us, the states, and it comes to my colleague, who's a nurse, who takes care of sick and injured, to bring this to the forefront. It's up to Arizona to protect itself. And so when I also hear comments like, this is a humanitarian crisis, yes, it's a humanitarian crisis. But it's created by this invasion that we have on our border. And so let's get the sequence of cause and effect accurate here. We have to protect ourselves because those who are vulnerable cannot protect themselves. And whether that be children in the womb or children being trafficked across our border, it's about time we did the right thing. And with that, I vote aye.
Senator Rogers votes aye. Senator Miranda,
Thank you, President Pro Tem. I rise to explain my vote.
please.
Well, I really get tired of hearing our so-called fixes that belong to our federal government. And so far, the majority of people that spoke have either ran for Congress or are going to run for Congress, and I highly encourage you to get over there because it's a federal issue and it does need to be fixed. The unintended consequences when we try to fix it here falls on families. And I have a few stories. There was once upon a time a sheriff back in the day that would constantly tell me, Catherine, it's the law. It's the law. I'm just following the law. That was his famous words. And I tried talking to him, but that's all he would say. So I'm going to try to change the narrative this time. The law enforcement, because we have good cops and we have bad cops. You good cops, the law enforcement, I really expect you to be at that podium and testify in committee opposing legislation like this, because the burden is going to be put on you. I understand the intentions of this bill because I did speak to the sponsor, and I did ask her to hold it. I'm trying everything. That didn't work. So I'm going to change the narrative and really try to put pressure on our law enforcement and our businesses. Because we've heard good stories in the House, and we got reminded of how this is unconstitutional. My colleagues over there did a good job of reminding us what the consequences are of this bill. But now changing the narrative, our businesses physically have to be here and oppose this legislation because you remember the consequences of your businesses. So I want to see all chambers, all businesses physically here, not write a letter and send it in, be here. The good officers that it affected back in the day, I really need to see you in the committees testifying, opposing this legislation. Yes, there is a problem at the border, and it is a humanitarian crisis. It's been like that for decades. So those of you that are running for Congress or tried to run and didn't make it, run again and fix this federal issue. Because us trying to fix it here has consequences to our families. I remember my late husband, Ben Miranda, he told me as we were trying to mentor a lot of students back in the day, he told me, take a look at these kids, Catherine, because one of these days they're going to grow up. And they're going to remember how their parents were treated. And guess what? They're all grown up. They're about 25 years old right now. And they're doctors and they're lawyers. They're elected officials. They're teachers. They remember. And as soon as this bill popped up, they got reminded. They do remember how their parents were treated. And that's the unintended consequences I was trying to speak to you about. I understand the intent of this, but it opens up a lot of fear, a lot of memories, bad memories, and again, the consequences, it's just not worth it. So I ask you again, if you could hold it, that would be awesome, and let's talk more. And with that, I vote no.
Senator Miranda votes no. Senator Gobble down.
Mr. President Pro Tem, I rise for to explain my vote.
Please.
Thank you. I'm going to speak and explain my vote as an immigrant. I became an American citizen in 1964 when my mother became an American citizen. My father was career Air Force, and he actually joined the military and became a citizen after several years of serving active duty. And so when I look at this bill, I want to share my experiences after SB 1070. Within 12 months, I was pulled over more than 10 times by law enforcement. And why I asked, why did you pull me over? They said, oh, you don't belong here. You are here illegally. I need you to prove your citizenship. And I said, sir, ma'am, officer, I am an American citizen. And every time I pass through the temporary border checkpoint on I-19, I say that, American citizen, to the border to the Border Patrol that is there. Attacks on immigrants, it's not new. It's happening over and over again. This bill is something that I feel very compassionate about. Being stopped those number of times, I want to share one thing with you. One time, even though all of them were very disrespectful, is my mother, who would carry her passport with her because she was so afraid that someone was going to stop her and ask her questions. My mom, who worked very, very hard to become an American citizen, studied very hard to become an American citizen, and was proud when she became an American citizen, is being stopped by law enforcement. Unacceptable. And I said, Mom, do me a favor. When they pulled us over, put your hands on the dashboard. Do not move. Do not give them a reason to do anything to us. And I remember the fear in my mother's eyes. This is going to begin again. My mother, the people I represent are going to be pulled over. I can take care of myself. I can talk to those law enforcement. But how many people are going to be impacted by that? I was in a shopping mall during SB 1070, and there was so many shoppers. It was Christmas time. It was joyous. People were going out, getting Christmas gifts, and Border Patrol was there in the parking lot with German shepherds and dogs and saying, people, show me your ID. And I walked over to someone who looked like they were in charge, and I said, excuse me, what are you doing? And what he said is we were making sure that all these individuals are American citizens. And I said, excuse me, a lot of these individuals that happen to have license plates from another country are here with visas and permission to be here to shop. And these people are bringing millions of dollars into our state. And here you are, putting the fear in them. This is going to be another repeat of SB 1070. This is something that is so unacceptable. This is going to impact people in their daily lives. This impacted my family. That's impacted my neighbors. This impacted my constituents. It's unacceptable. We talked about the real issue here, immigration, federal issue. But we, at the state of Arizona, we can be good to ourselves, and we can look for solutions. And this bill is not a solution. This is going to create more problems because that is going to be the resources, right, and are going to be impacted because people are going to be afraid to come out of their homes. They're going to be afraid to call law enforcement. All this does is divide our community. I love this country. And it was a great, when I talked to my parents, they came here because they wanted a better life. Why do we have to put more restraints on people that want to look for a better life? Yes, I agree. Come here legally. Come and go through the system. But it's getting harder and harder for people to come to this country and become American citizens like what my family did. I'm going to end is with something my father taught me when I was growing up, because he spent over 20 years as active duty in the military and very proud to serve his country in Vietnam as an immigrant serving a country that we live in. Is he said, Mija, any form of discrimination is unacceptable. I vote no.
Senator Gabaldon votes no. Leader abstain. Leader abstain.
I rise to explain my vote.
Please.
I thank you for your patience. I was moved by my colleague's speech. So, our Arizona economy is doing well, and we want it to continue. But this bill is likely to put our economy at risk. Bills like this and the old SB 1070 have been shown to have a detriment on our economy, such as tourism. In the first year after passage of 1070, Arizona saw a loss of an estimated $253 million of economic output and 2,700 jobs. Boycotts. Arizona-based businesses lost out after Senate Bill 1070 was passed, costing the state $141 million in revenue. And that was another $9 million loss to the general fund. Workforce. One study estimated that this bill could cause a drop of 17% in employment and over 581,000 jobs eliminated. So the state economy could shrink overall by over $48 billion. In Arizona, the innovation economy is thriving. It is creating not only great jobs with high pay, but also new businesses. And so we support STEM courses in school, science, technology, engineering, and math, because these courses are needed for the innovation workforce that is supercharging our Arizona economy. And 19% of STEM workers in Arizona are immigrants. Immigrants make up 1/6 of Arizona's total labor force and support the local economy in many ways. They account for 22% of entrepreneurs and 12% of nurses alone in our state. As neighbors, business owners, taxpayers, and workers, immigrants are an integral part of Arizona's diverse and thriving communities, and they make extensive contributions to the benefit of everybody. So I vote nay on this bill.
Leader Essing votes no. Senator Sundaration.
Mr. President Pro Tem, I rise to explain my vote.
Please.
Members, we've heard a lot of moving testimony already. I want to add to those comments that the impacts of this bill are broad, that this will affect and create fear with anyone with black or brown skin. And that's because the people who are coming across the border are very diverse. They're coming from a number of countries, from far and close by, including many migrants who have been coming from India, because our federal immigration system is so broken, it is impossible for anyone to even make it off of those lists to immigrate here through the proper processes that they would love to be following. They would love to follow the legal immigration path, but the backlog is years long for people to come through those channels. And so we're seeing people so desperate to come to this country that they are willing to go through the hardships of trekking across the desert in dangerous and difficult conditions to make it across our border. And so we must all stand together in solidarity against this harmful bill. Because how will this be implemented? How will any member of law enforcement know if you have crossed the border legally or illegally, other than by profiling you based on your skin color? And that's what we've heard. We've heard just now how this was implemented in the past, that this gives any law enforcement member who wants to the license to harass people of color, detain them, and make them prove their citizenship or that they're here lawfully. On top of creating this dangerous environment for the public by creating the potential for this damaging profiling of individuals, this bill is clearly unconstitutional. We know this because that's exactly what happened with SB 1070. Under the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution and long-standing Supreme Court precedents, states cannot adopt their own immigration laws that interfere with the federal government's framework. Let's take it up with them. Let's make sure they do something and make a change. But this bill is attempting to override bedrock constitutional principles and flout federal immigration law while harming Arizona, especially in brown and black communities. Time and time again, elected officials here in Arizona are ignoring their constituents, opting for the white supremacist rhetoric and mass incarceration that we see. It seems the majority is trying to get back to the offensive and embarrassing policies.
Mr. Majority Leader, what is your point?
The point is she's impugning the body that's pushing a white supremacy ideology.
What
No.
did I say?
No, that is not accurate. But
Thank
as
you.
we
Thanks for
mentioned
trying.
earlier, no member was mentioned here.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Senator,
I'll wrap up. Thank you. So it seems the majority is trying to get back to the offensive and embarrassing policies like SB 1070 and of Joe Arpaio that bring negative attention to this state. And I assure you that when Democrats are in the majority, we will reject this type of disgraceful policy. I vote no.
Senator Sundaration votes no. Senator Gobledone, I need you to press your button to vote. No worries. Senator Kavanaugh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Pro Tem, I explain my vote.
Please.
Cooperation between local and state law enforcement and federal law enforcement goes back hundreds of years, and it is well founded and legal by Supreme Court decisions. When you have a situation like we have today, where the federal government has created a policy where they are not enforcing federal immigration law that negatively impacts all the states, especially border states like Arizona, when you have a situation where the federal government has turned the Border Patrol into a welcome wagon that actually encourages more illegal immigration, that is the time that states must step up and do their part. And in the tradition of local police and state police assisting law enforcement at the federal level, this bill fits right in, and if we have to go back to the Supreme Court, we will, because frankly, I think this Supreme Court will back the protection of the borders of the United States. I vote yes.
Senator Kavanaugh votes aye. All right, members, we have a lot of, still a handful of yellow on the board, so I would ask you to please vote. Senator Fernandez.
Mr. President,
We've definitely had plenty of time, so if you haven't voted yet, I would ask you to do so. Senator Fernandez, please.
Thank you. Rise to explain my vote.
Please.
When I was a kid, I studied Russian, and I used to read stories about people in the streets being asked for their ID and citizenship. I used to think, how could that be?
Can you hold your mic a little closer?
Thank you. Okay. Want me to start all over?
Almost like a rapper. You got to,
right, thanks.
directionally put it there.
When I was a kid, I studied Russian and used to read stories about people in the streets being asked for their ID and citizenship. I used to think, how could that be? Why would anyone tolerate living in that manner? That's exactly what is happening here today. It's easy for those that are not going to be hassled to choose to hassle others. I'm sixth-generation American and Arizonan. This is not what many imagine for our country, and I vote no.
Senator Fernandez votes no. Senator Mendez.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pro Tem, I rise to explain my vote.
Please.
Members, we've already discussed how this unconstitutional proposal will only make worse the humanitarian crisis at the border. But when I explain that to my voters, they tell me that that's the point. Because if immigration isn't a hot-button issue dividing us with hate, then Republicans lose elections. Look, I'm a product of this Arizona legislature. Like Senator Miranda said, I probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for SB 1070, getting me and so many of my generation to protest racism in our state. I watched my community being torn apart by hate and ignorance, and then my uncle was deported, and my family was never the same. This failed attempt at cosplaying immigration enforcement for a campaign headline is only going to tear apart more of our families and ultimately produce more legislators like me. So, I mean, is that really what your point is, or what you're trying to do? Look, I find myself having to remind you all too often that we are supposed to be a nation of laws built by immigrants. We literally keep a statue up with the words, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free." And yet here we are trying to label every single person who comes across the border, including asylum seekers, as criminal. And that goes against our shared American values of dignity, life, and the pursuit of happiness. What we're not talking about with this bill is that the increase in attempted immigration that we're witnessing is mostly due to the inaction and sabotage at the federal level. Just last week or so, Republican senators at the federal level blocked an immigration legislative package that attempted to do something, and Republicans wouldn't let it happen because it was going to make Democrats look good before an election. That's sick. And then there's all the displacing factors around the world that are a direct result of our federal policy. For instance, the largest percentage, over 50% of migrants that are attempting to enter the U.S. since 2020 have come from Venezuela, where current U.S. foreign policy has been enforcing debilitating, suffocating economic sanctions since forever. And then there's all the trade economics that influence immigration. China just dropped billions of dollars into a giant industrial park right across the border that's already creating tons of jobs. And it won't take long for immigration to stop favoring us. So when you really think about it, I mean, I think it's I forget where he's from, but one senator was very blunt about how they bought a new Supreme Court, and they're just going to test it out with this kind of legislation. So what that tells me is that the real threat at the border is the far right, fueling a civil war showdown with the federal government, weaponizing hate, xenophobic politics, and white supremacy talking points, and then declaring a relentless war on immigrants with no regard to life, liberty, happiness, or even economics. This is un-American, and I vote no to hate.
All right, Senator Mendez votes no. I'd remind the gallery that you're to be seen and not heard. Senator Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Temp. I rise to explain my vote.
Please.
Members, I am 41 years old. I was born and raised in Phoenix, which means that I went to school at a time where learning factual history was not politicized or attacked, which means that I know that the vast majority of the members in this chamber are product of immigration. Immigration that has not seen action since 1986 under President Reagan. That is the last time we have seen movement on that broken system. This is a federal issue. And instead of coalescing to put pressure on our federal delegation to fix the problem that has been an issue under both Democratic president's administration and Republican presidential administrations, we are bringing up legislation that is so harmful to our communities that I feel like sometimes we miss what the impact behind a bill like SB1231 will do to the people. To the people like me that are so exhausted and so tired of fighting an uphill battle against hate. That is unconscionable to me. Legislation like this is exactly the reason why I ran for office and why I hold this seat of power now. And we've heard so many comments from my colleagues about the consequences of what this will bring and the cost that this will bring to the state of Arizona. The economic consequences, the political consequences. But more importantly, I think sometimes my colleagues on the other side of the aisle underestimate the consequences to their seats. This is SB 1072.0. And 14 years ago, that bill mobilized an entire generation to get involved, to get educated, to run for office, and now hold these seats in these chambers. This bill is going to mobilize the new wave behind that. And there's going to be a whole new generation of activists, of youth, of immigrants that are going to get involved. They're going to get educated on policy. They are going to register to run for office. They are going to go hit those doors and talk to their community. They are going to get their friends and their family involved. They're going to tell them, hey, the Senate is voting on SB 1231. Pay attention to what your representatives are voting on. And then they're going to win. And then they're going to be sworn into office, and they're going to come into these chambers, and they are going to absolutely stand against harmful policy like SB 1231 and its mirror bills that are moving in the House. And eventually, what we're going to see is the results like the election of 2020, when everybody was wondering why Arizona voted for a Democratic president for the first time in I don't know how many years. And it was because SB 1070 mobilized my community, especially, to get registered to vote and to participate to vote out hateful legislators and elected officials. So, in the future, when you wonder when Arizona starts voting more and more Democrats into office at every level of government, remember that it is going to be tied to SB 1231 and policy like it. And that will give you your answer to why you will slowly lose power and no longer hold the majority in these chambers. One of the best things about immigrants is that we are resilient. And no matter what we face and what opposition we face, we would persevere through it. And I cannot wait to see the moment that that happens, when my community gets involved and holds such a great presence in these offices that we will never see another bill like SB 1231 again. And with that, I vote no.
Senator Dondas votes no. Senator Gowan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise to explain my vote.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I come from the border region, the most cross-border in the United States, brings the most drugs across. My sheriff down there doesn't get a lot of help, has no help from the federal government whatsoever. You want to talk about the economic viability of what occurs? All we have to do is look to the neighbors over to the west. $73 billion in the hole. That's your economic viability. Right now, we're disguising with the immigration process everything for the cartel. The cartel is running amok. Are we not seeing this? Fentanyl, killing our children, our neighbors. Rape trees down on the border. They're not babysitters, folks, when they're bringing people across. Human trafficking is going to surpass the drug movement in a few years. Why? Because you can reuse people. Think about that. We're seeing that tremendously. Without a presence of officers on the border, the cartel run amok. What this allows is for our officers to say, are you here legally? If you're not, you can go walk right back across the border and come through a legal point of entry. Legal point of entry. You know, I have to dispel a few things, and 1070 was determined legal on the aspect that officers can ask and dig to see if somebody driving is here illegally. That's legal. The Supreme Court, the same one that ruled certain pieces of 1070 unconstitutional, ruled that portion, which is the meat of the bill, constitutional. So let's dispel that right now. So let's quit talking about that issue like it is not constitutional. I need to dispel another issue, Mr. Pro Tem. And that is all I know from my history. Republicans are not the ones who ever segregated any people in America. Ever. Hey, look, history's powerful. I'm a student in history. I know what the roots of my party are. And I know they were created, Republican Party was created to free the slaves, period, end of game. Civil Rights Act, Republicans. If we want to keep walking down that history trail, then let's talk about history. My wife's mother was born in Chihuahua. That's in Mexico. Came through legally. That's the point. We have laws for a reason. Follow the laws. If the federal government hasn't done their duty that you think we need more visas with, we still have to follow the law. It's okay. We can go talk to the federal government. We can talk to them all the time. Talk to our congressmen, say, hey, we need more visas. That's a different thing than saying, let's forget that the law is there and allow people to come illegally. Because that just creates more crime, as I've told you with the cartel. You know, Yuma's doing just fine when we're talking about economy. They have people coming legally to work farms, and then they go home. And then they come back and work again. If you've not seen that, go on down there and check it out. They do a great process. You know, this has nothing to do with skin color, and I'm getting tired of hearing that. Nothing to do with that. Nothing. Look at me. Nothing to do with skin color. Not my vote. You see my votes? Yes. It's nothing to do with your skin color, anybody's skin color. Don't tell me what my vote is about. Don't ever say that you know who I am inside, because I must be racist against my own children. That's absurd. That's the absurdity I keep hearing on this floor. It's shameful, Mr. Pro Tem. I thank the sponsor for bringing this through. We're having a tragedy in our own country, and we can't see that. You know what? I was talking with some legislators from other states. They're just finding out what's happening, even though it's on the news. Not often enough. Talk to them, they say, hey, what's going on down there? I tell them the tragic human trafficking coming across, the drugs, the cartels doing whatever they wish. There are no coyotes anymore. Cartel has taken that over. I love my nation. I love people in general, Mr. Pro Tem. I'm no bigot, no racist. But I think we have borders for a reason. We have laws for a reason. Or we might as well just live in anarchy. So let's follow the laws and walk that trail for now. If we have disagreements, then let's talk about them. And if we come to agreement, then let's fix the law. But until then, let's follow the law. That's all we're asking for, Mr. Pro Tem. When the federal government fails in its duties, those duties fall to the state. Again, I thank the senator from the good District of 29 for placing this bill forward and helping my constituency and our state and our country. With that, I vote aye.
Senator Gallen votes aye. Senators Champ and Borelli, how do you vote? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. I rise to explain my vote.
please.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. We've got a lot of things to unpack here. We talked about the economy, what illegal immigration actually will help our economy. Actually, that's not true. It actually suppresses wages. Now they can be exploited by a greedy employer because they can hire somebody cheaper, which affects your constituents. Every one of you. What we have here is a federal government that is the cartel enablers. Yeah, the federal government just step the hell up. Yes, yes, they do. It was brought up about that piece of legislation that Senator Sinema co-sponsored. That the media propaganda partners fawned all over. Folks in the audience, it was garbage. You're being lied to. Lied. What they would have done, let me see, $60 billion in the military for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel, $20 billion for border security. Wow, sounds great. Hogwash. That was to transport these folks that came here illegally that technically do not fall under the asylum clause. Under the asylum clause, it is the neighboring country they can seek asylum. Economic issues are not considered for asylum. So if they're coming in from Guatemala, they got to go to the next neighboring country. We have people coming in from China, the Middle East. Border Patrol is telling us 85% of the people coming across are other than Mexico. 85%. Who are these people? We see military-aged males. Military-aged males. They're getting on the bus and they got a slip of paper where they know where they got to go to Philadelphia to check in with. Who? Their handlers? During the Biden administration, we've had over 7.2 million that we know of has came across the border into this country. Just a couple of years ago, the population of Arizona was 7.2 million. Who are these people? Where do they come from? Do they get vaccinated? What kind of diseases are they bringing? I'm all about immigration. My grandparents were immigrants. And I take offense to saying, it's a white thing. Horse pucky. The Sicilians were discriminated. The Italians were discriminated when they first came here. The largest mass lynching was held in Mississippi and Louisiana of Italian immigrants. So I take offense to these kind of accusations. But this is about public safety. The federal government not doing their job, and therefore we have to. So I'm going to just read off a few names. These are victims of illegal aliens. Kimberly Lopez, stabbed 23 times, then shot. This is in 1985, because we want to go back in memory lane. Some of y'all were not even born then. We have Lopez actually was, she was carrying a 4-month-old baby when she was killed. I'll just skip over the Border Patrol agents and police officers because, a lot of people around here really don't care about that. We have here, Sarah Jane Carr, 28 years old, shot to death, 1998. Carrie Bird, 51 years old, Tempe, Arizona, killed. Carol Ann Kessler, from 42 years old, Casa Grande, killed. Tani Navidad, 16, shot to death. Travis Allen Smith, 19 years old, vehicular homicide, killed by a drunk driver. Amelia Lee, 71, killed when she was hit by a truckload of illegal aliens being smuggled. Michael Bolden, 36 years old, hit and run. It was in 2007. 2007, Susan Sharkus, 53, from the Tono Onum Indian tribes. Vehicular manslaughter. Excuse me, vehicular homicide. Naoma La Valia, 46, killed when an illegal rammed Mojave County Sheriff's Officer, excuse me, Mojave County, Maricopa County Sheriff's Office deputy in traffic. Candace Plum, 22, gunshot into the head. Tracy Kelly, 16, hit and killed by a drunk driver, illegal alien. The list goes on. We could be here another hour. So I'll even skip those, and I'll even skip the ones that are totally wounded. But let's just talk about the rapes. And this goes back to 2010, this list. From 2007 to 2010, Santana Alcivides, 39, who was duped by the Chandler rapist. He pleaded to 12 counts and 5 separate assaults, including charges of child molestation, attempted sexual contact with a minor, victims ranging from 12 to 15 years old. You know, we have one colleague likes to read off his computer. This is old stuff. Out of 75 confirmed victims, 59 were murdered, 10 were wounded, and 6 rapes. 37 of these were law enforcement. 28 murdered, 9 wounded. 13 of those were law enforcement from Phoenix PD, Mesa PD, and other law enforcement agencies. 38 of the 75 were civilians, 31 murdered, 6 rapes, 1 veteran wounded. Of the murdered, you know what? Canada, Russia, Mexico, etc., El Salvador, Peru, Venezuela. Those are countries. Those are countries. They're not races. Do I want somebody coming across a Canadian border illegally? No. Committing crimes? I'm not done yet. Let's spin us up to today. You know, and this is just a real quick thing. So I have to just kind of remind everybody what the federal government's not doing. Because, you know, Biden says, just pass this law and I'll sign it and I can do something. Another lie. Another lie. And their propaganda partners can perpetuate that lie. This is Section 212F of the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1952 gives the President of the United States broad authority to authorize immigration restrictions, including suspending the entry of all aliens. This one, here's Mexican national. He's a Mexican citizen who illegally entered our country in 2004 and was convicted of raping a child. He was deported in 2006. He was just taken into ICE custody in Massachusetts after re-entering our country illegally, Biden's open policies are really working good, aren't they? Here's another one. This is just a quick cursory. Illegal alien freed into the U.S. by Biden's DHS, charged with killing a young mother and her toddler. Really great. Really great. These are the kind of people that really want to come here and assimilate. Think about that. These are the people, these are the type of citizens we're welcoming that you want here? I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, there is hate in this world. And we human beings are the meanest animals on this planet. And we can start realizing, stop killing each other, we can finally be happy. But it ain't going to happen. Not unless we have laws to protect each other. Not mob rule. We have to have laws in place to give our law enforcement a tool, due process. Now, I also heard the statements about law enforcement pulling somebody over because they're profiling. We're in Arizona. 99.9% of everybody's got tinted windows. So the next time you're in your car and you see the car in front of you, look through that back window and see if you can go through the back window that's tinted and then the headrest that the driver has right behind their head. And all you see is the back of their head. And you tell me if you can figure out what sex or race they are. And if you can figure that out, my God, you're a magician, you're a visionary. You can come and see me and tell me which lotto numbers I need to pick. I vote aye.
Senator Roy votes aye. Senator Shamp,
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. I rise to explain my vote.
please.
You know, as I sit and I listen to the testimony on this bill, there's so many emotions that I go through. I get mad at the misinformation. I get sad that anyone would even begin to judge my actions as being something that they're not. I think that I am one of the members in this chamber that goes out of their way to make sure that I have conversations with everyone, that I listen to everyone's concerns. We need to make it known that this bill, there was a press conference on January 24th. The bill was not dropped until January 29th. This bill went through committee February 7th, and now it comes to the floor how many days later? And nobody wants to have a conversation with me about it until today? Today. I reach my hand across the aisle every single day. I'm an elected official that naively believed that we all want, regardless of R or D, we all come down here because we want what's best for the citizens of our state. We may be ideologically in disagreement of what that looks like, but we ultimately all want the same thing. And you know what makes this country so great and why people want to come here is because we have law and order and we have protections and we care about the health and safety of our citizens. I'm a nurse, first and foremost. And until you witness what I've witnessed in the hospitals, in the operating rooms, when you can't tell the difference between a woman's parts because of what's happened to them, when you have to do CPR on a child because they touched pills that someone left on their front porch, and they are now overdosing. We have legislation to make sure that Narcan is available to anyone that needs it so that we do not have children and innocent people dying from the drugs that are coming across that border. I'm offended that anyone, and I'm ashamed at anyone that makes this about immigration because that's not what this is. This bill is 22 pages long. There is one sentence in this bill that has to do with making it a state crime. I'm going to read it because I wonder if everybody has. It is unlawful for a person who is an alien to enter or attempt to enter this state directly from a foreign nation at any location other than a lawful port of entry. There is nothing in here that has anything to do with 1070. Nothing. I worked hard to make sure that this was going to be a tool that our law enforcement is asking us for to protect every single citizen in the state of Arizona. Fear of the past is no excuse for inaction. Because in my line of work outside of the Senate, inaction kills people. And we are getting reports every day that the federal government and Biden's open border policies and that inaction is killing people every single day, not just in Arizona. Every state is a border state. And the crisis that's happening, is there a humanitarian crisis? Yes, and I would argue this conversation making about immigration just makes it worse because the cartel controls it. Pound for pound, human trafficking makes them way more money. And the fact that you don't want to look at that. Why is there not a conversation about what we can do? Why is it that we have to just beat the drum of something in the past to create fear and misinformation? Are federal laws unconstitutional? I would argue that they're not. The federal government is not going to enforce their own laws, and they leave us here alone to try to manage this. It absolutely is our duty as elected officials to do something about it. We were created as the United States of America. The federal government did not come first. State sovereignty. You need to stand up and protect your citizens. You need to know what's actually really going on. Open your eyes. Go to the border. Go see what Senator Gowan was talking about, what he sees every day. Have a conversation. We talk about the law enforcement officials. You want them to come down? Absolutely. They did come down. They're down here begging for us to do something to help them. We don't legislate based on what may or may not happen in a court. Remember the oath you took. Our law enforcement is overwhelmed by the chaos created by Biden's open border policies. And it's time to take the handcuffs off of our law enforcement. This bill is supported 100% unanimous by the Sheriff's Association. The men elected by the citizens in the individual counties to protect every Arizonan. They need this. So to make this about immigration is shameful because it's false information. This is not about immigration. We need to give the sheriffs and the law enforcement the resources and the support. There are 3 sanctuaries in here. There are 4 affirmative defenses in here. I worked very hard to make sure that this was about what it really is about. And that is giving the sheriffs the capability to stop people who are breaking the law coming into our state and doing harm to the citizens of our state. Because I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I don't ever want to do CPR on a 3-year-old child again because they touched fentanyl that was left by an illegal criminal. That could be your daughter, your granddaughter. You, ladies and gentlemen, this is a crisis, and to call it anything but an invasion is wrong. I appreciate the support from my fellow members, and I really hope that you look at this and you realize exactly what this is, and that is for the protection of the citizens that we serve. I'm here to serve the people in my district and the people of the state. This isn't about power. This isn't about games. because as any of you that spend any time with me know that I don't do any of that. And with that, I vote aye.
All right, Senator Shamp votes aye. This is now closed. Secretary, record a vote by a vote of 16 ayes, 13 nays, 1 not voting. You've passed Senate Bill 1231 without the emergency.